Welcome now to the show, Uganda Fast. Thank you all for joining us today and happy Martyrs Day. We do want to believe that wherever you are having yourself a wonderful day. Now, on this show, we talk about patriotism or love for one's country. Now, this is a discussion that has been going on for some time now. Some believe that it has to happen naturally, while others think that it is determined by the environment, leadership opportunities, among others in a country. Now, some believe that countries that have good leadership, for example, and offer more opportunities and services to their citizens automatically have a much higher level of patriotism. Now, the mindsets highlighted above are built over a specific period of time, and it is very important to understand how these come up if we are to come up with effective ways to achieve a total shift. Now, Uganda First aims to remind Ugandans that each citizen has a responsibility to make their country into one they can easily love and maybe even die for. In the studios today, we have Mr. Odauk Paul, who is the Deputy Principal, School of Mindset Transformation. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and creating the time.
Thank you, Sandra.
We were also supposed to have another guest called Brigadier General Felix Kulaije, who is the Director of Operations and Mindset Change Operation Wealth Creation. But sadly, we are not able to have him in our studios today. He's attending a burial of Katumba Wamala's daughter's burial. So we definitely are not able, but we've been reliably informed that Paul will give us the right information when it gets to mindset and understanding the different things that affect why Ugandans or why citizens may not be patriotic. A very warm welcome and thank you as well for joining us. Remember, the hashtag is Uganda First. If there's anything you'd like to share with us on the show as we carry on, do send us your tweets on our social media platforms on Twitter and also on Facebook. I am your host, Sandra Twinobdio. Now, to start the pace of this discussion, Mr. Paul Odauk, I do want to start with a conversation I did post on Twitter. I posted something saying that what are some of the things that have changed the way you view your country, and mostly what are some of the steps that we can do as a country to achieve a greater level of patriotism from Ugandans, right? And one of the responses that I received was, it is a double sword. Let those who have been privileged with power act like it. Beats logic when those supposed to exhibit patriotism are of a pathetic rot. How do we expect their followers? How do they expect their followers to actually act? Let the mindset change start from up and trickles down. Fish begins to rot from the head. Now, you do remember the topic today is changing mindsets to actually achieve patriotism. Mr. Paul, why is it that on a daily basis, when someone talks about patriotism, they always relate it to politics?
Well, Sandra, I think it's because the whole conversation about patriotism started not too long ago. To be precise, the president in 2009 launched the National Patriotism Campaign Program in secondary schools in Uganda. And the next year, 2010, a secretariat for patriotism clubs was opened up in the office of the president. I was privileged to have been one of the founder actors in that program. And it's a new conversation. So the tendency in Uganda is when there is a government program, they associate it or they label it a program of the particular government in power at any one given moment. But I think we need to go into the Constitution to understand the foundations of this. Under the national objectives and directive principles of state policy of our Constitution, which sets out the principles that guide Ugandans and Uganda, there are 29 principles. And the 29th one, the last one, which is also on page 29 of the Constitution, says, and I quote in part, that the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations. Yes. And accordingly, it shall be, the word is shall be, the duty of every citizen and then they give a number. Now, the first one is to be patriotic and loyal to Uganda and to promote its well-being. So patriotism is a constitutional duty. And the Constitution says that if we want to have a country that we shall enjoy, if we want to have our rights, then we have duties to perform. In other words, you can't have one without the other. You cannot enjoy a country that we have not yet created. We cannot enjoy a situation that we have not worked for. That's what the Constitution is saying as a principle. So if we want human rights, then we must work for them. If we want happiness, we must work for it. If we want peace, we must work for it. Someone once said, even in areas of war and peace, that if you want peace, then you prepare for war.
Yes.
And during war, please pray for work for peace. And this is the natural dialectic, that we must always look at things in their opposite existences. So patriotism to me, and not just to me, to anyone who is familiar with the constitutional provisions, should not be tagged to any particular person in any one office.
Yeah.
This is a matter of all of us as citizens of Uganda. And perhaps it becomes easier if we define patriotism itself. People talk about that love for one's country is natural. And I always use the example of a baby. When a baby is born, it doesn't even know its mother. It doesn't have any feelings for any parent. For us men, it's even harder. The mother, it's easier. The baby soon develops attachment because the mother is relevant. Each time it's hungry, the breast is given, and quickly the baby realizes that, oh, this person is useful to me. But you, the father, you have to work harder to be relevant to this baby in its early life. It doesn't see any immediate day-to-day relevance. So this issue of love, it cannot be natural. If the love for parents is not inborn, it's developed after birth. How about the love for something a little bit more removed, like your country? It cannot possibly be natural. If the natural bond between a mother and a baby has to be nurtured.
So that means the country has to give you reasons to actually love it. Is that
there
what
are
you're trying to
reasons.
say?
It's about knowing those reasons. And I'll give them, for instance, this is our home. I mean, it's our home.
We should love it.
I don't know whether it's okay to hate one's home. I mean, you have no other home.
Yeah.
You might as well love it. It's your only home. So you look after it, you improve it, you look at how best to make it a comfortable home. To me, that's logical. It's not that this home you are born in is the best thing in the world and that's why you love it.
Yeah.
No, it's because it's yours. So if you want to make it better, I mean, if it should be better, then it's you to make it better. And that is the way I want us to look at it. This is our only country. And many people don't appreciate this when you have not traveled outside your country. It's only when you travel out that you realize there is nothing like home. And so to me, it's not about who is in which position in government. It's about our home. And it's our duty to make it better if it's not the best that we should have. So really the whole thing to me is a misconception that because the patriotism program was started by government, therefore it's a government program. It's not. It's the duty of government actually to popularize the constitutional provisions. So to that extent, yes, government had a duty to start the program. But that the program is there, it's a constitutional requirement that we have a citizen that is familiar with the provisions of the Constitution and that citizens are enabled to develop feelings of attachment and appreciation of our home country, which is our only home. So To me, it's not politics. It's not partisan. This is a non-partisan issue, and we must look at it as citizens. That's it.
We're going to be getting to that in a bit, on how we can change the way we view patriotism as a politics. We correlate the two. But I want us to specifically speak about the family unit. We know that different perceptions, different mindsets that people tend to get in their day-to-day life as they grow up, are usually shaped at home. Do you think the family unit actually plays a very key role in shaping the way we view our country in terms of being patriotic?
That's a very good one. It again links up with the previous issue which I was talking about, that Uganda is our home, and here you're asking me about home.
Interesting.
So, what is home? Home is that place where the human unit in that home is called a family. And therefore, the family is the building block for the entire country. So you cannot have a Uganda as a nation without Ugandan families, because it's the building blocks that constitutes the whole. So the family is a very healthy and appropriate starting point. What happens in the family eventually aggregates into what will be seen at the national level. And indeed, where you have stable and strong family units, then you expect the same to be reflected at the national level. Family is the smallest social organization. And then beyond the family, you go into the clans. These are very many families which are joined together by blood relationships. Now, many clans will form a tribe.
Yeah.
That is, if you are at the primitive level of development, you're still moving from the primitive commune to the next stage, which is the tribe. And this is another misnomer. You know, we refer to ourselves as coming from tribes, meaning that we come from primitive units. And it's really something which is a product of us not understanding the English language very well. But it's a word which is reflective of a level of social development. Now, beyond that, human beings went to the level of nationality. Now, many tribes coming together, constituting a nationality. Like in Buganda, I think there are 52 clans. Is it? 52 clans. And then when you look at the origins, historical origins of these, some of them are not necessarily originally Buganda and so on. And it's the same across. They constitute a tribe, and then later constituting a nationality. Now, beyond the nationality, different nationalities now can consolidate in history and form up a nation. We ourselves were heading in that direction. All societies have gone through it. But we in Uganda were interrupted when colonialism came in. That natural process of growth into nationalities and finally a nation was interrupted. So we found ourselves in a much more modern system introduced by foreigners, but which had not emerged from within ourselves.
Yes.
So right from the formation of this political entity known as Uganda today, we were not participants, we were not consulted. So I think part of the problem we have in our relationship with what is called the state today is that we have not, as a people, ordinary people, the Basoga, the Banyankole, the Bachiga, all of us, we have not really been fully reconciled to this.
Do you think that greatly contributes to the way we don't appreciate the country?
Absolutely.
In fact, you bring in a bigger aspect. If you're to look at the general view within Ugandans, you find Baganda more supportive, respectful of their Baganda cultures, which is different from the way when it comes to the general Ugandan situations. And
you see, these things which I was talking about, nationality, nation, and so on, these should develop from within. The processes leading to the emergence of one and eventually the other and finally the nation should have been allowed to occur from within. But in our case, this was introduced externally. Somebody came here and said, now you come here. This is this. And that interrupted our natural process because social metamorphosis was going on. You know, we had reached a level where we had a number of kingdoms and chiefdoms around. If these had been allowed their natural processes, they would have probably found a way of merging into one bigger thing, eventually a nation. Whatever it would have been called, but it would be here. But now when somebody came and just drew arbitrarily, said now from here to that hill to the other mountain,
That
this
belongs
is
to
now
this.
Uganda.
Yes.
And we are not consulted, we are not psychologically in any way prepared. And I think that largely explains some of the problems that we have had along the way. People have never quite felt this is part of them. So there will be this talk, there is still this talk, even now. You find people talking about, those are government things.
Yes.
Meaning it's not part of us, that is government. That is what I mean by saying we have not fully
Because
been
whatever
reconciled.
the government does actually affects you as a citizen at the end of
Yes.
the day.
So, because of the historical formation of this state, and then independence came, and you remember the immediate challenges from independence. 66, the crisis, the constitutional crisis in 66, the violence that came along with that, and an attempted assassination of the president in 69, the military coup 71, and the total collapse all the way up to 79, and then the subsequent turmoil, you know, 1979, 80, 85, up to as recently as 2006. We have not quite been at peace. So all these processes have led to entrenching of some of these negative sentiments. And so today, there are many people quite in our minds. We call ourselves Ugandans, but in our minds, we aren't very comfortable with this thing called the Ugandan state. We feel it's still foreign to us. It's those people versus us who are here. So the relationship is such that it's not easy for the two to exist because they are not existing as one.
Yeah.
The people think, on the other hand, there is something foreign to them called the state. And whoever is there historically has been part of trouble. When they look at the history, it has always come with something called the state or its agents and so on. So when you now talk about that this is ours, we are the ones in charge of the state, can we decide what happens to it and so on? People are not yet fully convinced, deep inside them. They may say, okay, let's give it a try, but they're very suspicious. And should somebody make a mistake, then they say, didn't we tell you?
So you see, it actually gets back to the leadership and politics, like we mentioned at the start. That is the misconception that people have in general.
Yes. Of course, it may not be entirely a misconception, because when you look at the history, leadership has not helped to improve this, this
Patriotism
impression.
spirit.
But now that we have stabilized the country, I think we must recognize that there is a moment when certain phases are ended and a new phase is ushered in. And this is the phase now when the message must change, and it's changing. Government came in with the Patriotism program deliberately to try and change the conversation. That can we focus, can we talk about, can we can we bathe, can we think, can we dream about love for once? And we make it a national culture. So the patriotism message is about love, unity, and service.
All right. All right, Paul, we'll definitely be getting back to this conversation. For us to better understand patriotism and our topic today, there's a video that I want us to watch, and of course we'll be back just to continue this discussion.
The ideology of patriotism transcends even electoral seasons. It is the love for your country. It is a program that promotes the ideology of working together, putting the common interest together, and shunning sectarian tendencies which tend to come up during political campaigns. Therefore, I think it can help us in making people recover from their sentiments that are normally arise during the time of elections.
Patriotism can be used as a tool to change the mindset in such a way that they are trying to inform somebody of the information that he or she never knew before, and that can change the mindset of that person to love his country, to have that zeal of developing his country, coming together with everyone. I've really changed because I've gotten to know the history. I've gotten to know different things which have been happening within the country which I never knew before. So now I have developed a mind of joining my colleagues such that we can develop our country.
Ugandans are annoyed over things that are not true. Ugandans are hating their country and they're loving other countries. They wish they were in other countries. So patriotism is the only way, and per se the greatest way, that the government and everyone in Uganda has to use to get us to love our nation again. We have everything and every country may envy, from the minerals to the rivers, but people don't care about that stuff. So anyone that has the opportunity to learn and understand about this country will actually know that they owe the country a lot. Uganda deserves a lot from us, then we deserve a lot from it.
The only problem that is there is that many students or many youth are misinformed and they do not know what is taking place in Uganda. And through that, they are not developing love for their country.
Patriotism can help much in changing the mindsets of various Ugandans simply because it lectures us on what takes place within our country. Before coming here, we used to perceive information from various sources. For example, a perfect example could be social media platforms like Facebook. So we get some information which is wrong and we actually take it in. But when we come to the patriotic classes, we find out that we are given the right information that is taking place all over the country.
My mindset has really changed because back then, before I came here, I was really misinformed about so many things about my country. And I had hatred from no good reason. But from today, I've learned so much. I've learned that before I try to get out to the world, lash out to my country, or get angry at anyone, I have to first get information, and authentic information.
We can use this platform to educate the youths who have wrong thoughts about Uganda.
Patriotism basically is a tool to everyone, to every Ugandan, either in Uganda or abroad, because its major aim was to remove that ideology that was implanted into the Ugandans from the Western influence. This is our country. We should at any cost love our country. We shouldn't be told how to love our country because this is our country. It's our role to love it.
Generally, because patriotism is love for the nation, it should be it's something that shouldn't even be taught. It's something that should be inborn. And it's the only way that maybe through such trainings that the nation can be changed by making people get that urge in them. Remember that they have a debt by the virtue of being born as Ugandans. They owe the country that love, because there is no other home apart from the country they are in, and therefore they must have that love for the country, Uganda.
So it basically opens our minds because it surely shows you where the Uganda came from straight since the Uganda had its independence.
Patriotism can be used to transform we as the youth, first of all, to love our country and then love ourselves.
I used to think it's a political issue, but after being told about it, I came to know that patriotism is not about party, but it's all about loving the nation as the whole, not the party.
It's not about politics. It's not about who you stand for. It's not about the colors, because you see these colors are green. They are Uganda. Uganda is green. Everywhere is green. So these are not DP. These are colors that stand for all of us. Uganda as a nation is bigger than what you stand for. So whatever the political party you have or you support, I don't know, whatever they are, please come here and stand for Uganda.
You're still watching Uganda Fast. The hashtag is Uganda Fast on our social media platforms. Do send us your thoughts on what you think about today's topic. I do know that you attended this session where a number of university students were brought together and taken through a series of topics. What was the first impression that you could pick from these young people when it got to patriotism and their love for the country?
Well, there have been several of those programs, and I have had the privilege to facilitate in all of them. And the impression one gets is really what has come through from the comments. That the
they
majority
hated the
of
country for nothing?
No, I want to put it this way, that people are just not informed about their country. So whatever sentiments they have are a result of lack of information or being misinformed about what their country is. And the liberation, you see it, when somebody gets to know that this is what it is, you just see the change. And many times, I've been in these things for the last 35 years, developing, passing on these messages. And all along, you hear people who come for these programs, such programs. When they go back, they are accused of having been brainwashed. It's not about anything else other than giving them information. You'll be amazed at how ignorant Ugandans are, even about what is around them. Forget about the history. What is immediately around them? People don't know. And when you tell them, their perspectives change. And that's what it takes.
So actually now speaking about information, if we are to go to the next unit that shapes up quite the mindsets that are built over time, we are talking about the schools. The curriculum is currently under review. Do you think if you've gotten a chance, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to look at it, has it been tailored in such a way that it offers enough information to the young people, the students, enough information for them to be able to appreciate their country?
The curriculum at secondary school?
Yes.
Yes, we have now rolled out the government has rolled out the new lower secondary curriculum. And it really tries to address some of these shortcomings. It is building in on, focusing on more of the functionality of the knowledge or information that the children get. Because in some of the information in the past syllabi, even me who went through those things many years ago, some of them today I don't see why I studied them. Because they don't seem to make
they're not relevant.
They're not relevant to me. And they have never been in my life.
European history?
Well, it's not bad to know a story, but why wasn't I taught the Ugandan history that we now teach? These children, when you hear them talking about getting to know the history, they're at school, they're at university, and we are just telling them outside the university lecture hall, but they are fascinated to learn about their own history. But ask them about any other history outside, they know everything. That's what I wonder now. Why do we have a system where Ugandans know everything about other people and not much about themselves? I think that's not correct.
Well, we'll definitely dive into what we can do, the strategies that can be put in place to ensure that people know so much about their country. You're still with us. Uganda Fast. I've been speaking to Mr. Paul Odauk, who's the Deputy Principal, National Farmers Leadership Center. And like I mentioned earlier, you must have seen a flyer around. We were supposed to have Brigadier General Felix Kulaije, who's the Director of Operations Mindset Change, Operation Wealth Creation. But sadly, he's not been able to be with us. He's attending the burial of General Katumba Wamala's daughter. And once again, of course, we send our thoughts, positive thoughts to the family. It's been very unfortunate. And as a country, of course, we have a lot to reflect on that. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with Uganda Fast.
NTV Uganda will host a pre-budget dialogue this Sunday, 6th of June 2021 under the theme, Putting the 2021-2022 budget and the NDP3 in perspective.
We would like to see more of those kind of tax heads that encourage production rather than reducing production.
Will this budget deliver industrialization for...
A huge gap exactly there, because we do have some good facilities here in Uganda.
It's in the mind. It's in the mind, really. And the parents whose mindsets you are describing are themselves products of our history. And they must be understood. Because if you're talking about mindset change, it's not just about the young people. It's about everybody. This parent, what did, probably you're talking about ourselves, my generation. We are the parents. And what we went through, a person of my age, I would understand, much as I would not accept it, but I would understand because of the background. There was a time when Uganda, just the name Uganda, was tantamount to trouble. Mentioning Uganda meant you were talking about trouble. It was a synonym for trouble. And that leads to certain mindsets. And people, once the mindset is in a certain way, it's very difficult to change it.
Now, how do we start working towards changing it? Should we start, for instance, drafting short videos and using a lot of mass media and throwing it here and there? How would we start to structure our minds? And even for the parents, for those that are going to be parents, for even different sectors, how do we structure our messages to appeal to the Ugandans so that the spirit of patriotism is actually lifted?
I'm not very sure whether I'm an expert in that area of mass communication, but from my own understanding of what needs to be done, I think there's too much negativity in the communication, in the messaging, in the conversations in this country. And I think we must find a way of changing that narrative.
Yes.
Somebody says, Uganda's Zahabu, and meaning it in a very negative, in a sarcastic way and so on. But the truth is actually Uganda is Zahabu. On a more serious note, yes. Now, if we can tinker that message and turn it from a sarcastic one into a serious one, because the Zahabu is there to be seen. But also, interlinking the country. There are many things that must be done. One of them is interlinking our peoples. When we don't know each other, we can't even appreciate our own country. You are a little bit more advantaged because you move around. But I can assure you there are people who never leave the village they are born in until they die. Now, it would be unfair to expect that person to be in love with areas away from that village where he or she has never been.
Now, for a person that is watching us this afternoon, when we continue to speak about love for your country, patriotism on an individual basis, what is that one thing that you can do that actually shows you love your country?
One thing?
A number of things combined in one thing.
Well, I would find it difficult to pick one thing to show.
Is it, for instance, what I want to bring out, is it when you're deciding to take your children to school, do you say, I'm taking them to Ugandan schools? Is that love for your country? If you get sick and you say, let me use Ugandan hospitals, is that love for your country? When you're planning for a vacation and then you decide, let me go to, say, Jinja, Kasese, Fort Poto, is that love for your country? At what point do you see as an individual, I'm actually showing love to my country? Not cutting down trees, for instance, not building in swamps. I believe it's a campus of so many things.
It's many things.
Yeah.
But I could perhaps suggest that I think the easiest and most effective way one can begin to build and communicate one's love is let's work.
Let's work together.
Let's work, starting with our own homes. It's up to you to ensure that the grass is not long in your compound, that your home is clean, that your home is decent, and so on. So let's start working for this country by working for ourselves, for our homes. It would be unfair to expect this peasant to show their love by, first going and working in the neighbor's home when their own home is not well. I think that would be the beginning of this message. Let's start with what we should do first. Can we improve on our homes? Because these homes collectively will constitute Uganda. And if we improve individual homes, then we shall improve the country. And once that country is better, it becomes more reflective of our love for it. And then we shall have even more immediate and conscious reasons for us to defend. We have put and made an input into this country, and we develop a sense of ownership because we are the ones who improved this home. So I will work and fight for it, I will defend it, and consequently it will grow gradually into defense and love for the whole country. It cannot be something that instantly happens. It is a generational thing. We must begin laying the brickwork now. It will be unrealistic for anyone to think that what we envision to have at the end of this effort will happen tomorrow, in 2 years or in 5 years. But let's each lay a brick. If at the end of our own time you have laid 100 bricks, that's a contribution. Let other generations continue. For instance, my own generation, we have seen, in my lifetime, I've seen this country move from a virtually failed state to now a state that is reckoned with in the region and even in the world. Because now you can't discuss Africa, anything political or economic in Africa, without reference to Uganda. So that is a brick laid, or 2 or 3, whatever the number of bricks. Subsequent generations must continue along a similar path of how do we build this further and improve it further and further. It's not far from perfect, but certainly much better than it was in the past. And if we all have that in mind, that we can keep on improving day by day, then one day some other generations in the future will say, wow, it's done. I think we shall go far.
Now, Mr. Paul Odauk, I'm just curious to find out from you, is there a country that you have in mind, just to better help our viewers understand what it means to be patriotic, that you think has done so well when it gets to ensuring their citizens are patriotic? Is there one that you have in mind?
There are
what
many.
is that unique aspect about that country?
There are many, but one which I usually use in my lectures is Israel.
Interesting.
Because Israel is a desert. And I grew up knowing that Israel is the promised land. Now, it's only when I first went to Israel, one day I sat on a piece of rock, reflecting while in Israel. That's when I realized, I said, but if this is the promised land, and these people have been hearing stories of Israelis defending this place, you can't touch an inch of Israel. But it's all rock, desert, it never rains, there's no fertile soil, but they love it. Now, to me, there was no more vivid expression of this concept of patriotism than that time when I went to Israel. Because if you took a Ugandan mindset there, that my country must be very nice before I love it, then Israel would not exist. Because by 1941, there was nothing there except empty rocks. But those people loved that place, they love it, it's their home, they consider it God-given, and they built it. Since 1948, today they have transformed it into a superpower. By all intents and purposes, there are a few things they don't even tell us, but people know technologically Israel is one of the most advanced. They have done it not because somebody else had made it nice for them, but because they loved it first and worked to make it what they wanted to make to be. And today they have it. And then we, from this beautiful land with all the fertile soils, we now go out there to admire what other people have created. It's certainly a good lesson to us, because the argument, we started with this idea that, you know, there's no reason to love Uganda. Really? With all these 126 freshwater lakes? And Israel has one, and they call it a sea, Sea of Galilee. It's not a sea, it's just a lake. But they have only one. We have so many, and we think we have no reason. Every person in the world comes here to see our biggest river, which they used to deceive us was the second longest in the world. It's actually the longest in the world. It starts right here. We have it. And we don't have reason. Any mineral that you, any source of wealth in the world, just give me one example which we don't have in Uganda. There's none. We have everything. And I always tell people that if you want to understand...
Every single time you talk about the minerals and the good things we have, you will hear most Ugandans say the leadership pushes them to hate their country, because even when we have all these good natural resources, they are misused. You know, they're misused and they do not get to benefit the common man or the citizen.
You know, this common man, the citizen, we must learn to fight, you know, for our things, because these are our things. If, like now, if you came to my home, I have a home somewhere where I live, my family is there, and all the children there know this is their home. You try to pick anything from the compound and you'll see how they'll react. Now, that is the natural way that you'd expect for people who love their country, that you defend what is yours. But we should not now abandon the home because a thief has come and picked a TV.
Yes.
It's a very strange, I failed to understand it myself, that because there is a thief who has picked this, therefore we all abandon the home. I don't think that's a good mindset. I rather would say we must fight and defend our home, because this is ours. Why are you taking it? So if the issue is that there is a thief, let's deal with the thief. But sometimes I think it's a diversionary argument, because the mindset is more about, you know, we have been taught to hate ourselves. That's why on issues of names, you have seen, you know, when I came into the studio, I was even particular about names. It's because, you know, in the minds of Africans, even our names, we don't like them. We prefer foreign names. And those are the things, when you talk about mindset change, those are the things you touch. Who do you think you are? Are you Tunyoburio or Sandra?
Tunyoburio.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yes.
Because it begins to redefine you and begins to reshape your mind gradually. And one by one, eventually we'll make a bundle of what you're calling patriotism.
Now, human nature always asks, how does it benefit me? What are some of the benefits of a country that is patriotic? For instance, a viewer that is watching us, of what benefit is it for him?
Patriotism means love.
Yes.
And love means peace. And peace is real. Do we have to argue about its benefits? It's only when you are not at peace that you realize how important it is. But this, you know, being together, working together, makes work easier. Unity, therefore, is beneficial because it enables us to do work together and faster and easier. But it is sometimes diversionary for us to think that this benefit must first come, and then we do our part. To me, I think that's what needs to be changed. Because rather, when you look into the Bible, the message God gave us said, go out there and look after this world, develop it, fill it up. But he said, go there and develop it. God didn't create the superhighways for us. He didn't. He said, I have made the world for you. All the minerals are in the ground. Now go and reorganize it for your own good. And that is the mindset of a patriot, that let us use what God has gifted us with and create that which we want to have. And to me, that's about work. It's about being together. And it's really about defending and protecting what we have, starting with the natural resources.
I do believe that you have interacted with different young people.
Yes.
And you've seen how unemployment among the youth actually pushes them to think all sorts of negative things, either about themselves or about the country. What would you speak to that when we correlate unemployment in the country and, of course, patriotism as well?
Of course, much of this problem is a creation of the education system. That we have a system that produces people who are not prepared by the system to fit into the world and the job market. We don't teach our children how the world works. We just take them through lesson after lesson, promote to next class. Then when the classes are over, the child doesn't know how the world works. And our education system, I think, for the long-term future, we need to seriously put an end to this by reforming the curricula. But in the meantime, I think young people should also be guided on the kind of career paths they take. Because in that area, I think there is not much guidance. You find people doing courses that are really
Not
you know,
going to help them after
yeah,
the school.
because if you go in for a language course and you are 100 of you, and you all get bachelor's degrees in a particular language,
Yeah.
how many of you are going to get jobs because you know that language? Because some of the machines don't even speak our languages. So those are the areas where we get challenges. You find a bachelor of science, agriculture, first class degree holder. He's on the street of Kampala looking for a job. This is a mindset problem. Because I thought agriculture is supposed to be in the fields. But this child is prepared to go and work in an office. They are not prepared to practice agriculture. That is the mismatch in the education system. So we need to retool our children. You know, in the last 36 years, we have expanded education exponentially to the extent that now we have 53 universities, starting from one university 35 years ago. And this is an achievement. You can clap your hand, but this is what has created unemployment. Because it's easier to train, to take a child through education than to expand the economy. The economy has not expanded as much as the education system has churned out young people. So the area of tooling, we need to immediately develop a system of retooling these products of the education system to make them hands-on. Because the system as it is doesn't do that very much. So we need to have, government needs to put in place some system, maybe through the Directorate of Industrial Training, but on a much larger scale. I know they are doing something, but the numbers are bigger than what they are doing. If we can find a way of expanding this so that perhaps as part of the university courses and college courses, this skilling is done as part, so that as they are doing the university degree course, they are also doing the skilling and come out with some certificate, vocational certificates. That could be one way of fighting this unemployment, because some of them are just unemployable. They're educated, but they don't have the skills. And these are challenges, not of their making, but of the system. And I think going forward, we should also begin, as we reform the education, we should do more of vocationalizing it, so that society begins to appreciate.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the trouble is that people think a degree is very important.
Yeah.
You go to some other countries like Germany, technical education is where people go. Because once you have...
In fact, actually, just speaking to that, when someone leaves, say, Senior 6 and they get into a vocational institution, there's a societal...
They think that's a failure.
Yeah, that's a failure.
Yeah.
Yet they're getting the skills that are right for the world.
Those are the people who will get the jobs. But society thinks, this one didn't go far.
Now, sadly, we are running out of time, but I do want us to briefly speak about insecurity. I see most of the comments that I'm getting on social media around the fact that the insecurity that happens in a country affects the way people appreciate it. What do you have to say to that? And you continue to say, you have to love your country regardless. You have to fight for it. But in a situation like that, how do you navigate and say, okay, there's this insecurity, but I'll still love my country and I'll still fight for it and I'll still defend it?
But you see, part of the problem is perceptions. Because the Uganda that I see today, what people call insecurity, is far, far minuscule compared to insecurity in the past. You know, there was a time when you could not walk on the street of Kampala without finding dead bodies on the streets. You wake up in the morning, when I was at university, as you're walking to lectures, you find dead bodies. And you know, there was no social media, so we never used to find it all over the place. But this is a situation that has long since been put in the past. Now, actually, the result of having generally a peaceful country is that when one incident happens, and in the presence of social media, it's overblown.
Yes.
And people now look at it, oh, the world is coming to an end. But and I'm not insensitive to the particular incidents like this of General Katumba Wamala. It's true, that is insecurity. But if we are to look at the overall picture, it's not that the country has descended into mayhem. It's not true. But because news now flies all around the world in seconds on social media, it now tends to be exaggerated that the situation is so bad. But I wouldn't say it's really bad. Even as recently as 2003, anyone who remembers, half of this country was insecure for a long time when the LRA invaded and came as far as Teso and so on and was all over northern Uganda. The situations then were certainly worse than what we are dealing with now is armed criminals who hit once in a while, but it's sensationalized because of the technology available. So we need also to inform our people.
But how can we actually use that? You know, in the break we talked about, how we can come up with different videos and we make sure that Ugandans see so much of the beauty of Uganda, just as much as we see so much of the bad of Uganda.
As I said earlier, it's good it came from you. And I'm saying we have a lot of historical videos that could speak about our past and present. But we also have very many, now with the available technology, we also have very many more recent videos which would explain or show what our country is beyond what is normally sensationalized on the social media. And I think it's about organizing ourselves. There are people, you know, some of them, your colleagues, you people have these things. Why don't we get